Do you even have a mouth? Shut up. Okay, people, welcome back to another Fwoosh review. Today, let's take a look at the Medicom MAFEX Marvel Comics Carnage. And I know that's a running joke on this channel, MAFEX, MAFEX. And in my heart of hearts, I know it is MAFEX. It's Miracle Action Figure EX. Miracle Action Figure MAFEX. But I said MAFEX for so many years. You know, when you get that just drilled into your head, it feels weird to say it different. But some people say MAFEX. Some people say MAFEX. MAFEX. I don't think there's any wrong way. I'm just putting that out into the ether, out into the internet, out into YouTube land, and I'm just gonna let it lie. Oh, I'm doing a toy review. Let's just get to that. Looking at the package, it's your standard Medicom packaging, the color scheme that fits the character, some Carnage comic art. Killing is what I do. Marvel 6-inch, I really like that when it calls out the size of the figure. It's number 118 in the line, Carnage picture, Carnage logo. On the side, I really like this grid pattern. Then you get a pretty promotional art, comic Carnage head. On the back, again, with the logos, a bunch of pretty promotional shots just thrown into one big shot. Scary little teddy bear. On the other side, promotional shot, more logos. On top, same thing, different order. On bottom, bunch of legalese, some warnings, don't put them in your mouth. That unpiratable hologram that, yep, this will never be bootlegged. But let's get this open, see what's going on here. And Carnage is one of those characters that I'm not really attached to because he came about around that time that I was getting out of comics. And when I came back later, it was all X characters. But there's just something about Carnage, you know? You like Venom, and then he kind of went anti-hero. And what are you supposed to do after that? You go even further. You lean harder into that craziness. This other tray's taped to the bottom, but holy shit, there's a lot of accessories here. On top of the ones we could see right in the window, and then under that is the MAFEX stand. Can tighten them up with a screwdriver. That may hold some weight now, but I don't know. I have other stands that are way better. And MAFEX continues to impress. I mean, they are getting some... or well, I should say a lot of their QC issues under control, and I'll get to that here in a second. But for the most part, it ends up being a perfectly translated 90s comic book action figure. I mean, just look at it. If you didn't know any better, you would think this just leapt right out of a panel. All this black detail to the symbiote is actually raised sculpted detail. Every little bit, and they did a fantastic job of making it so asymmetrical with these little itty bitty dots here and there. Smaller strings, bigger strings, just kind of thrown at it. It's chaos. It's carnage. But that continues all the way down the body where it should. You know, here's smaller ones, here's bigger ones, running all the way down to the feet. Nothing on the bottoms of the feet, and then, well, yep, there you go, my first big gripe. All this beautiful detail with the semi-gloss black, the matte red. It's a great, great look. And because of all that, that makes the knees not having that black detail on it just stick out at you. And I understand why they didn't. It's not actually a kneecap sculpted between two joints. That is the joint. And I always love how they do this on the MAFEX figures where it comes out mostly seamless. There's no gap when you bend it. Unfortunately, because of how that has to fit into the top of the leg and the bottom of the leg, if they had put sculpted detail on there, it would have rubbed against it or held off or added some gap to it. That doesn't mean they couldn't have just painted some black stripes on there, you know, connecting these lines from top to bottom. But again, maybe they don't want to do that on the joint because they didn't do it on the elbow either. It's the same concept. You bend it, it continues on around. At the same time, not a lot could have been done on the inside where it's bare, and then on the wrists where it's a swivel hinge swivel. Ankles. Other than the oozy black sculpted detail though, it's a fairly basic body. Toes are a bit pointy, and even though it's a fist, there's the pointy Carnage thumb. There's a little musculature, some pecs, some abs, some biceps, some triceps, but it's the head that brings it all together. Some more ooey gooey black coming up from the costume, settling on the face, and then the big white eyes. And again, the asymmetry just sets it off. You see where the eyes almost meet, they're not centered. They're not the same exact shape. Again, it causes a bit of creepiness. The teeth are sculpted and nicely painted, and then there's the pink emptiness. We'll talk more about this when we get to accessories. But just like those original comics, I love how the pink sets off everything. It's just the oddball color in the middle of red and black. Unfortunately, I did run into the same problem we ran into with the MAFEX Wolverine. You know what I'm talking about, the arm popping off. But it's only been on the left, and well, I kind of fixed it. It takes quite a bit of force to get it off. They've been running with this setup for a bit. Venom even though his arms don't pop off, same exact setup. It wasn't until Wolverine we had a problem. Then Cyclops didn't have the problem. With Carnage, there was a little extra piece of plastic up here on top, like a nub, or where the mold was bad, but I think that was holding it from going all the way in. And I know I should have taken a picture before I snipped it off, but I thought, surely that can't be it. Snip. Like I said, not as bad as Wolverine was right out of the package, but about as good as after we fixed them. It was when I was switching out the hands. I have this bad habit of just grabbing the arm and letting everything else hang. So I was pulling, and that's when it first did it. I've also noticed that with some pull, the legs come off too. What I did was try to drop the leg down, and that's when that came off. But I haven't had it pop off. Does this one come off? No, that one's super tight. Oh, well, no, I can do that one too. But I've had to physically pull those for them to come off. It hasn't really happened as I'm playing with it. Or I mean posing it around, because I'm an adult. Going over articulation, there is a dumbbell joint at the top of the neck. That does have the usual MAFEX bend in it where it allows more up. And then at the bottom of the neck is a ball joint. Altogether, can look way up, can bury the chin, but here we go. Tilt! And tilt, 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 tilt. Swivel. I don't quite know what's going on with the shoulder. It seems to be a ball joint right there, but I think that may be on a joint too under this cap cover. Because you can go forward, you can go back, down, up, which already gets you this far, but with the hinge in the shoulder, it goes up to there. Rotates all the way around. Swivel at the bicep. Double elbow goes all the way up. Swivel hinge, swivel at the wrist, so you can have it hinging, but if you want to turn it a different direction, you can have it go side to side. Ball joint mid-torso, ball joint in the waist together. Well, most of it's in the waist, a little bit more in the chest. Arc back, tilt. Oh, well, there's a lot of tilt to that middle section. Get to there. Push on over. It does gap up a bit right there, but if you go back, you can see it and you can counteract that a bit like that. There is a drop down to the hips and there's a rubbery crotch piece. So together, you can get that up past 90, and then with some rotating and some more pushing, you can go even further. Back, what does out look like? Oh man, not quite 90. There is a swivel incorporated up at the top. It doesn't go all the way around, but you can in and out. Double knee. It does not want to go. I mean, you can, force it, bing, but I don't want to push it too many times like that. Swivel, hinge, swivel at the foot so you can rotate side to side. Hinge back, hinge forward, forward facing pin for rocker, and then a toe joint that goes, about right there. For accessories, Carnage comes with many sets of hands. It, of course, comes with 2 fists, 2 splayed out, sharp, pointy hands, 2 sharp, pointy, relaxed hands, 2 hands with the thumb and forefinger pointed out, about to do some stabby stabbing, 2 grip hands, 2 double clawed hands, 2 web slinging hands, or symbiote swinging hands, I guess. 2 fists that have spiky symbiote shooting out of it. And then there's a right symbiote axe hand and a left symbiote hammer hand. And Medicom really did their research here. Most of these can be traced back to Carnage's first appearances. The axe hand, the hammer hand, the stabby hands, the clawed hands, the swinging hands. Even the one with the thumb and forefinger out is him about to, do some carnage. Now, I've done this a couple times, so they have loosened up, but there is still, even then, at first it was really hard, but now there is an actual audible pop to it. And then the ones I haven't put on as much, bit of a battle. I like that they're tight. You talking to me, Baba? Then there's 2 symbiote tendril wraps for his arms. And with those, you take the hand off, push them up on the arm, and you can either use them to accent the weapon hands or push it on up just to have some symbiote. But then there is a longer one that you can wrap around the arm, kind of put in the grip hand and use it for swinging through the city. Then there's a set of hands and feet that have magnets in them. This has been pretty standard with the wall crawling MAFEX figures. The feet are, especially compared to the hands, fairly easy to pull off. In fact, the magnet feet have more of a pop to it, so I may just leave those on because from the top, you wouldn't even know. You have to actually look at it to see the magnets. And then, of course, that pops onto the hand. Not the strongest magnets, so I'll either replace them or well, I doubt if I use them. And then finally, there are alternate heads. Besides the standard one that came in the package, there is also this kind of screaming head. And looking at the pictures, you can already see why some people may have a problem with this. To swap them out, you just pull. You have that ball joint on top. You have socket on the bottom, push. And there is even crazier carnage. Where most companies would have had this open with the actual teeth sculpted in, emptiness, and then the inside painted pink, Medicom went in a a different direction. They translated it directly off the comic page. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of times when Carnage was drawn, you could see teeth, you could see gap through there, but sometimes, whenever it was shown from the side, it was all pink like this. But most of all in the comic art, it was always shown as undetailed pink space. Unlike Venom, there wasn't a tongue, there wasn't drool, there wasn't more teeth on the inside. It was always just pink emptiness. If Medicom had sculpted this as teeth, there would have been shadow in there. It would have been different shades of pink simply because of how the light hits it. So it looking like this, like it's an actual human head with a mask with the pink like on it instead of inside the mouth, I don't have a problem with this. I actually kind of like it because it's weird and wacky. And you may say it's not as realistic, and I can only say it's a comic book character with a deadly symbiote all over his body that runs around town killing people. They can do what they want. It's just Medicom's way of translating a 2D effect into the 3D real world. But besides that look, there is also an unmasked Cletus Kasady head. And Medicom nails their MAFEX figures based on comic or cartoons. I still have my gripes when it's based on live action, when they have to get a lot of detail to get that realistic look. Not so much here. They just had to punch the eyes, make them straight, make sure they look good, the teeth. I wish there was some wash to the hair to bring out that detail though, but even then, that's just because of my lights. You get it in regular light with shadows and stuff. Yeah, not bad. Height-wise, Carnage is 6 5/16 inches tall, which does put him taller than the MAFEX Spider-Man and, well, actually just slightly taller than the MAFEX Venom. A lot of people have a problem with this Venom because he's not big and hulking and bulking, but back in his first appearance, he was a normal-sized dude. Well, a normal-sized muscular dude, but he wasn't that much bigger than Spider-Man. And Carnage being about the same height, but more lanky, yeah, I'm good with this. But in my brain, in perfect world, if Venom was a T-Rex, Carnage is a raptor, and I always expect Venom to be a little bit bigger. He looks really good with the MAFEX Wolverine and Cyclops, and just as good with the MAFEX Gwenpool and Deadpool. And no, he didn't come with that gun. That's one I found somewhere and it fit. If you're thinking of fitting him in with your Marvel Legends, there's no problem with that either. Here he is with the Marvel Legends Venom and the Marvel Legends Retro Spider-Man. He is taller than the most recent Carnage we got in the Marvel Legends line with the Venom Pool wave. And then he's taller but more slender than the Bucky Cap body that they used on Red Goblin, which is the same body used on the older Marvel Legends Carnage. And then here's a custom Cletus I made, and that uses the Marvel Legends Unmasked Cletus. I do like the Medicom better, but then this third-party head I painted up, of course it's hand-painted. You can put some extra detail in it. And then finally, even though it's never meant to be in neutral position like this, here is the Kyoto Amazing Yamaguchi Carnage. The MAFEX will never get into the poses that the Revoltech can, but at different strokes. So at the end of the day, another fine addition to the Medicom MAFEX Marvel comic line. And before we go too far into deep thoughts and such, pulling the arm and the legs off is not a major negative to this figure. It's just how it is assembled, and like I said, it doesn't fall apart in my hands when I'm posing it. I just wanted to point that out in case somebody ran into it and knew that it had to be fixed, or maybe it does talk you out of actually buying this figure. Hey, all I can do is show you what it does, right? But after having several Carnages on the shelf from different companies, this is the one that evokes the most 90s-ness. And now that we have Medicom Spider-Man, Medicom Venom, and Medicom Carnage, man, that's just the holy trinity of 90s comic book covers. That'll make for a fantastic display on the shelf. And oh, did they go above and beyond with the extras here. Like I said, they did a lot of research, and it was essentially going through those first stories with Carnage and going, we're gonna make that, and 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 that. But saying that, again, I understand why people may not like, well, they don't want to mess with the arm or the legs, but then there is the pink mouth, and I think that may be the biggest complaint I've seen online so far. But to me, it's just Medicom wanting to stay as close to comic accurate as possible, even if it does pull it out of the real world a bit. And that makes me like it most of all. But again, we're talking about an $80 action figure. Shouldn't have to fix stuff like that. They should have their engineering down pat. But personally speaking, I like it when there's a little bit of fixing to be done. It allows me to pull it apart, see what's going on. Because with Venom, I never knew that that joint went up through the bicep and then plugged into the shoulder. It wasn't until Wolverine that that came apart. Kind of pissed me off. And then when I simmered down, I figured out a fix for it. That's just me. That's what I look for. That may not be what you want from an action figure. So I'll just leave you with this. With the accessories here and the overall look, you're not going to get closer to comic accurate. So if you enjoyed the review, comment, like, subscribe. Much love to the plus. If you're interested in seeing videos early or in a position to help out the channel, patreon.com. But wherever you may be watching this, I'll always catch you on the Fwoosh. And in case you didn't catch my Wolverine fix, it is essentially shaving off the bottom of the shoulder here, and that allows the pin to actually plug all the way to where it's supposed to go. For some reason, the sculpt down at the bottom of this originally held the bicep down, and it only got one plug. When you plug this in, it's actually 2 pops.